What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Loft Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Finnegan, joined by Tom Schultz. We got him on camera this week. Tom, what's going on, brother?
Nothing. I finally got the camera. Finn was hounding me a little bit for that. Full disclosure, Seton Hall tips off at 5:30, so I got the second monitor over here. So if you see me peeking and reacting, it's definitely going to be because of hopefully some good stuff they're doing against St. John's tonight.
What's the status for them? Are they like a bubble team considered right now?
Nah,
Or
I mean it's an incredibly weak bubble this year. Seton Hall just doesn't have good wins. That's their problem. So they have hopefully St. John's tonight, and then UConn in the final. I think they're going to have to win both if they want to make the tournament. But we'll see. Crazier things have happened. It starts with today. They got to beat St. John's tonight. But we'll talk hoops on Sunday.
yeah, that's right, folks. So we're gonna have a special bonus episode this coming Sunday when the brackets are released. We'll give you our thoughts on the full field. Was it still 68? It might even be more
Yeah,
at this
68.
point.
I think that's going to change in the immediate future. I don't know how immediate, but I think we're going to get more teams at some point soon.
Definitely. So yeah, we'll break it all down. We'll give you maybe some predictions and break down the matchups as we head into the madness. So right, so we're recording this on Friday night. The NFL's new league year has officially begun. So free agents, as of this past Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time, can now officially sign contracts. So we're recording this on Friday night. We will react to any noteworthy signings that came about between Tuesday up until now, and any others that, pop up during the show. We'll talk about those too. But tonight, we need to start off talking about Maxx Crosby and the trade that never was. Tom, I feel like we talk about Crosby every single show we get together. There's always some news relating to him and his status with the Raiders. But last we spoke, right, on Monday, we had an agreement in place. The Raiders were to trade Maxx Crosby to the Ravens for 2 first-round picks this year and next. So, right, the trade was agreed upon last Friday night. Then the news broke this past Tuesday night that the Ravens were backing out of the trade agreement. And right, we all found this out really because the Raiders announced on their X account that the Ravens were backing out. So the big rumor as to why the Ravens backed out is because Crosby failed his physical and the Ravens had concerns regarding his long-term prognosis. So, right, for those that might not know, he had surgery on his left knee, specifically his meniscus, and it was reported that he was ahead of schedule in his rehab. Now, he played through that injury for much of last season. He still accumulated 10 sacks until the Raiders shut him down in late December when the season was over, basically, for them. So the Ravens back out of this trade, and they pivot by signing Trey Hendrickson of the Bengals to a 4-year, $112 million contract. And that transaction was announced on Wednesday, and that was roughly about 12 hours or so after the Crosby trade fell through, right? Ravens GM Eric DeCosta, he came out and said the original plan that they had was to pair Crosby and Hendrickson together after they lost Tyler Linderbaum in free agency. By the way, Linderbaum signed with the Raiders, the largest contract ever given to an interior offensive lineman. So the Ravens, they move forward here with Hendrickson on their defensive line. They keep their 2 first-round picks. The Raiders will regroup. They say if anybody wants Maxx Crosby, you're still giving up 2 first-round picks. Crosby has since come out on social media, and he said to Raider fans, hey, I'm ready to roll as a Raider. I'm attacking this offseason, and I'm going to ensure that I am 200% by training camp, he said. So, Tom, what do you make of all this?
Yeah, it was a crazy Monday, right? I think I was watching the Rangers actually, and then this broke, and then being Cowboy fans, everybody was like, "Are they back in? Are they back in? Are they back in?" And it just felt like a whirlwind for 3 or 4 hours there, which was pretty crazy. Um, yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this, right? I guess the first being the Ravens. Something clearly changed between the weekend and Monday. I know everybody's like, well, it was Monday night. I think this decision was made not well before Monday night, but it's clearly a decision they had made before Monday. So, yeah, something clearly changed on that end. I have to, and I know they've talked about failing the physical. Diana Rossini reported it. Somebody else reported it. It's also been reported since then that I think they talked to between 3 to 5 independent specialists to look at the scans of his knee. Clearly, there is something there that concerns maybe not all 5 of those doctors, but enough of those doctors that, You have to the Ravens had to go back and look at this and reevaluate it, and they clearly felt that 2 firsts weren't worth it. I'm really curious to hear, and again, I'm sure this story will come out in the maybe next couple months, maybe a year, maybe eventually when he gets traded, we'll hear the behind the scenes stuff on this story about what exactly is going on with that knee. In this, there has to be something there that really scared the Ravens, and I understand that now it looks like he's gonna be okay for the immediate future, but there must be real concern, and I guess if you're trading 2 first-round picks and 2 guys that you look at that you're gonna have on your roster for what, 5 years, you're hoping, on a pretty good rookie deal, I think it was just too much risk for the Ravens, and I think when you look at how the league has responded to it, I'm sure we'll touch on that at some point, he hasn't been dealt. It doesn't sound like he's gonna get dealt. It doesn't sound like the Raiders are budging from their first 2-round picks, or asking price of 2 first-round picks, and that is scaring teams. Whatever happened on between Friday and Monday has scared teams enough that nobody is looking to make that same deal. So, yeah, it's very interesting, and, it changes a lot of things.
Yeah, I could definitely see there being, right, in terms of like the long-term prognosis, right? There's something there that maybe it scared the Ravens. I'm going to offer a little bit of a different take to our audience, though. What maybe the Ravens could have been thinking about. So let's look at what's happened to the Ravens so far this offseason. They've, they've lost a lot of solid players in free agency. One, a great one in Tyler Linderbaum, right? He left the Ravens and he happened to just sign with the Raiders, and I think that's a great signing for the Raiders. We touched upon that on our last show recently. This is a team though that's lost a lot of good players. Alohi Gilman, the safety in the secondary, they lost him. Isaiah Likely, the tight end, he's gone. And then a couple other guys on the defense, Draymond Jones, a solid contributor to the front seven. Even a guy like Nandam Matabike, he potentially could have a career-ending injury. This team, this roster, the way it's currently made up right now, right? You have your superstar players on the team. You've got guys like Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, Kyle Hamilton, Roquan Smith. This has always been a team, the Ravens, that I feel like year after year, because they have a certain type of, they have these players, these big name players that we think of that are stars, that they're always considered like a Super Bowl favorite. And I think, right, those guys I named are really good. But from there, with this roster currently, especially after losing those guys, there's a big drop off here. Like this roster is currently not that good, in my opinion. I think what happened here, I think the Ravens came to a realization that this roster, the makeup of it currently, especially on the defensive side, is not that good. Maybe it was someone in that organization. Maybe it's a fresh face. Maybe it's a guy like Jesse Minter or someone that came over with him on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe they pointed this out and they said, you know what? We're giving up 2 first-round picks here for Maxx Crosby. Why don't we do this instead? Why don't we sign Trey Hendrickson for that same spot on the field where he'd be playing? And we need to use these picks to continue to improve the roster. So, unfortunately for them, what they've done, they've created like really an uncomfortable situation for themselves here by how they operated, right? People can say they operated kind of shady here. Maybe it's a lack of good faith and backing out of this agreement. And I think going forward, a lot of teams might be very cautious when it comes to making any types of deals with the Ravens. It's actually funny. I heard I was listening to, actually it was a Jets pod. I was listening to Tom the other day, and I guess this one guy who was on the pod, he's like the facilitator. He used to, I guess, work for Major League Baseball, and he covered a lot of stuff with the Baltimore Orioles. And apparently this has been a thing in Baltimore with the Orioles where they would try to sign guys and then guys would, quote unquote, fail physicals and they wouldn't end up signing them. So it's like, is there something going, are they using similar doctors here? Like he was kind of making a joke about like what's going on in Baltimore with these doctors who are overseeing the physicals for the professional sports teams. But just really an odd situation. This is a very rare situation. I think it's happened in the past with some
It has,
teams.
but not frequently, and
Right.
and never of a deal of this magnitude.
Correct. Nothing of a deal this magnitude. I mean, that's my thoughts on the Ravens. Really, my thoughts on the Raiders. they don't come out of here looking that bad. I mean, right, you can make the case that the value for a potential trade for Crosby does go down, but right, Crosby's saying he's committed now, right? I mean, the Raiders are under no obligation to trade him. All right. And looking at what the Raiders have done in free agency, we covered it a lot on our last show, right? N'Kobe Dean, Quay Walker, they signed Kwity Paye, they traded for Teron Johnson, they've re-signed Eric Stokes, Malcolm Kuntz. Also on the defense, with Crosby coming back, locked in here, ain't looking so bad. They've added some players here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch on the Ravens point first. I still think the Ravens wanted this football player, and I think I do think there's a medical side of it that they're concerned with. Now, did they know about it when they made this trade? Did they know about it at the start of the weekend? Is it something that Eric DeCosta and the whole front office and coaching staff sat on for a couple days? And then, as somebody reported, I wish I had who, they had reported that they had cold feet and that was part of it. I'm sure that's part of it. I would just say, since the backing out of this trade got announced on Monday, there's been no movement on Maxx Crosby. So there are clearly other teams that don't feel comfortable trading for this guy at that asking price. And maybe there weren't to begin with, but the Raiders aren't backing down on their price. And I'll just mention, I'll mention the Cowboys. The Cowboys doctor was one of the guys who was called in, Dr. Cooper, who's very well respected, works with a number of different professional athletes around the country. The Cowboys respect him a lot. He's one of the only guys I think that can look at Jerry Jones and say a no on a player, and Jerry Jones will listen to that and really take that to heart. And if Dr. Cooper is going back to the Dallas Cowboys, a team that at first, when this first broke, they were being talked about as still being involved, and then 2 hours later, the Cowboys were out on. I think that just tells me there is a medical side to this that is still concerning them. And the Hendrickson thing, I just don't ever buy that it was Hendrickson and Crosby. I know that's what DeCosta is saying now. I don't believe that was ever in play. So I think the Ravens, over the course of deciding what they wanted to do, and whether this is right or wrong, probably spoke with Hendrickson's camp, determined that what they're paying for Hendrickson is virtually what they'd pay for Crosby, and then said, once we can get Hendrickson, we'll pull out of the Crosby deal. From a Raider perspective, I think this hurts them because I think they were ready to move on from Crosby, and I think they were looking forward to those two first. I think it hurts them right now as a football team. You're going to get a guy back. Uh, and I think this now becomes a prime candidate of a guy who you're looking to deal at the trade deadline. You hope he comes back, and you hope he's healthy, and you hope he has 10 sacks by this time at the trade deadline, and then you look to flip him for that same asking price for a desperate team, whether it's the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Bears. Those are just three teams off the top of my head. Who knows what football team might be in contention for the playoffs this time, or come this part of the season at the trade deadline, who might be desperate enough to deal for him. Yeah, I think as a football team, the Raiders will take this. They'll keep him there. In an ideal world, he comes on this defense. He's a leader. He plays great. And then at the trade deadline, they trade him. I still don't know how they're going to make this thing work. But I know Raider fans are hoping they can. And yeah, Max looks like he's ready to hit the ground running, and I'm sure he'll be a Raider week one. And then I'll be curious to keep an eye on his name at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I agree with, I can't see the original plan being Hendrickson
Yeah.
with Crosby. That doesn't make sense to me with all the money that they're committing to that edge position there. So there was some type of pivot that was done here. By the Ravens. And I'm sure, like you said, yeah, I'm sure there's going to be more news that comes out, over probably the next few months. I would love to hear from Crosby himself if he ever decided to give like some type of interview about it. I don't know if that'll happen, but yeah, this is definitely not the last we'll hear of news relating to what happened here.
And I'm
Why this
sure it's
trade
like
didn't
a
go
a
through.
a future risk thing too. Like, I'm sure any of these teams that were in for Crosby, the Ravens included, would take him right now for a year or two. But when we're talking about dealing 2 first-round picks, and one of those picks is a top 15 pick this year, you cannot undervalue the fact that you get a guy on your roster on a pretty good contract for 4 years at a minimum, and if he's good enough, that 5th year option before you have to figure it out. There's a world where Maxx Crosby's knee a 2 years, 3 years from now, I'm sure this is the Ravens' rationale, that 2 to 3 years from now, this knee's a problem, and now whether he can play or not and stay on the football field, let alone produce for you, versus what you could have with those 2 first-round picks. So, did the Ravens go about it the right way? Probably not, but, I heard people being like, "Well, is this gonna impact teams dealing with the Ravens in the future?" All NFL GMs wanna win. If the Ravens have a player you want or they're gonna offer you draft picks, you're not gonna say no. You're gonna take the same exact risk the Raiders did. But yeah, it was an eventful Monday night, and who knows? It could be an eventful couple weeks, depending on how some of these free agent signings go. We'll touch on some of them, and then I'm probably gonna, if you're cool with it, mention some of the guys who are still out there in free agency. Mention some of those guys, and if you swing and miss on some of these tier 2, tier 3 uh, free agents, now all of a sudden maybe you go back in for Maxx Crosby. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see what the rest of it, plays out as we hear over the next couple of months. I'm sure more news will come out regarding what happened here. All right, let's transition, some quarterback news we got over the past couple days. We'll touch on that. So, couple of transactions here. So, let's start with Kyler Murray. He signed a 1-year contract with the Vikings after being formally released by the Cardinals. This season with the Vikings, he will make $36.8 million. The Cardinals are paying just about all that outside of the minimal, which is what the Vikings will cover. So I found it interesting too that he's kind of already looking ahead to 2027. He apparently met virtually with like 3 to 5 teams that might need a starting quarterback after next year. I haven't seen any news though about what teams actually were a part of that virtual meeting. But the Vikings, it sounds like the Vikings have come out and they're basically painting the signing like there's going to be like a competition between Kyler and JJ McCarthy for the starting job. I don't know how factual that is, though. What are your thoughts, Tom, on the Kyler Murray signing?
Well, we got the full Kyler experience with me last week, right? We got my opinion on him as a football player. If that was either Monday or Friday, and then I think we all knew he was going to end up here. It sure seemed like he was going to end up here. I think if you're one of these top end draft pick quarterbacks that have kind of flamed out with wherever you're at, I would say there are 3 coaches that I'd look to end up with, right? I think one is Sean McVay, I think the other is Kyle Shanahan, and the third would be Kevin O'Connell. And Kyler Murray has put himself in a position to meet with a coach that I think does a really good job on the quarterbacks he has. So that's a great start for Kyler as it is. I think he walks into a position where I think he's going to win this starting job. If you believe everything you're reading about the Vikings and how much Kevin O'Connell likes JJ McCarthy, or maybe not likes him, but valued him last year versus what the outgoing GM valued him, I think Kyler's coming in here to win this starting position. And this is a football team that is not a bad football team. They have a good defense. They have playmakers on offense. This is a position where if Kevin O'Connell can get Kyler Murray to be a functional NFL quarterback, play within their system, maybe do a little bit of the extending plays like Kyler does, but doesn't live and die off of that stuff. This is a great position for Kyler Murray to go into on a 1-year deal, prove it. And then if he plays well, he'll look to stay in Minnesota, and I'm sure they'd open up the checkbook for him. Or as you said, he can meet with probably kind of double back on some of these teams he's met with and go, all right, here's my body of work under a really good coach. It's the best position he could have ended up in. I still don't necessarily buy him as an everyday starter in the NFL, but if there's one of 3 coaches that can change my opinion on that or help develop it. I mean, look at Baker Mayfield, and I know it's not Kevin O'Connell, but you look at Baker Mayfield before he went with Sean McVay and how he's after Sean McVay, and getting with coaches like that help you understand offense, understand reads, how to get the ball out of your hand quickly, make the right decision. If you can get one of those coaches that can help develop you and do that consistently, I mean, you can become, in Baker's case, at times a top 10 quarterback in this league. So Kyler's put himself in a position to do it. Now he's got to show. He's got to show he is the guy that a lot of people in Arizona thought he was, and what fans in Minnesota are hoping he can become.
Yeah, agreed. It's a fantastic landing spot for him. Hopefully, O'Connell can help him out. Just like right, I mean, how many times we see Kyler Murray just running around, runs backwards, all the way around to the
Long
left,
balls
all
off
the
his
way down to the right, throws
backfoot.
the ball
Yep.
down the field. I mean, like it's madness the way he was playing in Arizona. Hopefully, O'Connell can assist and help him adjust back to at least maybe the player that Kyler was before the knee injury when he won Rookie of the Year, and hopefully O'Connell can help him. Out with some, correcting some of those bad habits that he showcased over the past couple of years. I'm going to throw another coach at you that I really like. It's only 1 year of work, but Liam Cohen, what he was able
Yeah,
to do for Trevor Lawrence last
that's a
year,
great shout.
yeah, he is right. We only have really 1 year. He did work with Baker for a year or two in Tampa,
Yep,
but he is from that McVay coaching tree as
yep.
well. So I'm interested to see, if we'll see about Trevor Lawrence, how if he can continue to progress into the stud quarterback we all expected him to be coming out of Clemson. But yeah, I think Kyler, this is a really good situation for him. A 1 year contract. Maybe it'll be similar to his. He hits the market. Maybe if that happens, the Vikings may not be as foolish to let that quarterback leave.
I don't think they will.
But that possibility is out there really in 26. We'll see how he handles it. I'm
If
sure as we
if
get closer to
KOC
the
is right on if Kevin O'Connell is right on this one, he's gonna keep his guy because we know he was very much team Sam Darnold a year ago, and they picked the GM's guy over his. If Kyler can be a really serviceable quarterback for let's face it, like a division that still is pretty wide open. We'll talk about some teams in a little bit about if we like what they did or didn't do. But for as much as people like Chicago and what they are, there's a world where they come back down to earth a little bit next year, and the Vikings could win this division. So yeah, it's a great landing spot for Kyler, and now he's got to prove that he can be the guy.
All right, next quarterback I want to talk about, Daniel Jones. So Danny Dimes, right? He re-signed with the Colts, 2 years, $88 million. The contract can pay up to $100 million if he hits all of his incentives. So right, so he was negotiating off of the transition tag, and this based on the tag, right? This really isn't that big of an increase for him. Jones is now the 12th highest paid starting quarterback if he hits all his incentives. He would be the 17th highest paid quarterback if he doesn't hit any of his incentives. So there are reports that the Colts are right now expecting him to be the Week 1 starter. Color me a little skeptical on that, but I think the Colts, I think they made out pretty well here with this contract over just 2 years. What do you
I'm a
think?
zag on you. I think this is a massive risk.
Oh, yeah.
I understand they were boxed in a corner here because Daniel Jones paid well. That's a lot of money to pay. And granted, he was going to play on the tag, but we could add this same debate about him on the tag. Is he worth playing on paying the tag? I get this is what you do for quarterbacks. I get this is what you do for quarterbacks that you feel can win you a Super Bowl. This is a guy who's shown in Indianapolis he can be serviceable, and he did it over what, 12 games, 13 games. This is a massive risk for Indianapolis. They really didn't have a choice in the matter with what was out there and the other options. So I understand if any Colts fans are like, "Well, we had to do this." Yeah, you did. I still think there's a risk to this. I did a guy who looked good last year. Again, he spent a little bit of time with Kevin O'Connell too. I hope that helped him. There's also a world where this guy transitions back to what he was with the Giants, maybe a little bit better. He's serviceable, and you're paying this guy a lot of money to be maybe a mid-tier quarterback in the NFL. And again, they probably had to do it. Probably wasn't much of a choice in the matter, but I think this is a risk for the Colts paying him this over 2 years. It's only 2 years, so they'll probably be okay with it and live with it. But I do think there's risk in this signing.
Yeah, I think there is some risk. I think one of the biggest factors really that played into this, like, let's look at how the Colts finished last season, right? This was a team that was what, 8-2 at one point, I believe, and they finished 8-9. They missed the playoffs. I think looking at it from this perspective, this regime, Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, there's a lot of pressure on them going into the season, right? I mean, Steichen, he this is going to be what, his 4th year in Indianapolis, I believe, and no playoffs. They haven't made the playoffs yet. And like you said, there wasn't a lot of great options out there for them. I mean, you're right, Kyler Murray was out there, but it didn't seem like that was too realistic. It looked like Minnesota was the lock
And
there.
I probably would take Daniel Jones over Kyler Murray, but for me, and I'll let you finish your point, it's just the price factor comes into it.
The price factor does come into it, but you know what? I think the reason they're moving forward, one of the reasons is right. They know who Daniel is. They
Yeah.
know what
Yep.
they know his makeup, and yeah, he's coming off the knee injury. That's a major injury, and we'll see when he comes back really how mobile he's going to be, because mobility has been a big factor for him over his playing career. How he's able to move in the pocket and run upfield. But yeah, I think for Ballard and Syke, and this is probably, I mean, if they miss the playoffs this year, this is probably it for those guys. They're probably going to be done, right? It's technically a new ownership group. Irsay, he passed away, unfortunately. His daughters are running the team, and I'm sure they were looking at, they're probably thinking to themselves, well, what, we lose our quarterback. Well, what the hell happened here last year? How could we not make the playoffs? All we needed was a couple more wins here down the stretch. So, yeah, I think this is a little bit of desperation being made here, but I think, yeah, for this regime, the GM and the coach, this is their final shot, and they're like, you know what, let's ride with Daniel Jones, and if we f it up here and we suck, then we're out of the job anyway. So,
And we talk about it all the time, right? Like these GMs and coaches have legitimate pressure on them. And
mhm.
this is a spot where you're right. They need to make the playoffs this year. It's easy for me to sit here when I have nothing invested and say, if I was a general manager of the Colts, I'd punt on this guy as a quarterback. Yeah, they absolutely are building what they feel is the best win now team. And let's be honest, he's probably the best quarterback for that right now anyway. If we have to run through who the free agent quarterbacks are, him or Malik Willis, I'd probably take the chance on Daniel Jones too. And if my job was on the line, I'd probably offer that too. I will say about him as a player, he was 8-4, 8-3, technically 8-4 because he started that Jags game before he got hurt. He had just lost three of his last, I guess, or four of his last five, although I won't count the Jacksonville game because he started that game and got hurt. So he lost three of his last four. His wins this year: Miami, beat Denver, which was a good win at home. Then it's Tennessee, Vegas, Arizona, the Chargers, good win, Tennessee, and Atlanta. They did beat two playoff teams. Now, Denver was at home, and the Chargers were away, and the Chargers were very up and down last year. So those are good wins. 6 of his 8 wins came against non-playoff teams. And his losses were Pittsburgh, the Rams, Houston, and Kansas City at Kansas City. So, and granted, his stat line wasn't awful outside that Pittsburgh game where he had the 3 interceptions. He was good and serviceable. So just keep it kind of, I just want to throw it out there that he was good last year. They didn't beat a lot of good teams. But at the same time, did they finish last in this division? Second to last, right?
They finished, let's see, they were behind Jacksonville and Houston, so they were third.
Yes. So, yeah, they'll play a moderate schedule again next year. But yeah, he was good for them. Didn't beat a lot of great football teams. Just feel the need to throw that out there again. But your point is spot on. This is an ownership group that is probably putting pressure, or maybe they're not, but this is a front office that feels the pressure of we need to make the playoffs this year. This is a guy who has, as you mentioned, he's familiar with the offense. The team loves him. He did perform well last year. They're going to take the risk on him this year, and I do think it's a risk, but it's one they're willing to take.
Let's not forget too, going into the draft this year, the Colts do not have a first round pick.
Yes. Yeah,
So
that's a
even if
very
they
big point as
wanted,
well.
if
Next year
they
as well, right?
next year as well,
Yep.
that's right. And who has those picks? The New York Jets.
Let's get
And that's
into
a
it.
great
Come on.
transition here.
Let's get into it.
Look at this. Let's get into a little transition here. Speaking of quarterback news. So the Jets have acquired Geno Smith and a 2026 seventh round pick from the Raiders for a 2026 sixth round pick. So they actually got the seventh round pick back when they traded it for Minka Fitzpatrick. It's funny they got a seventh back there. But so Geno Smith comes back to where it all began as a second round pick back in 2013. So he comes back to the Jets. He agrees to a restructured contract. So he actually agreed to a restructured contract with the Raiders before the trade. The Raiders are picking up most of his salary for this upcoming season. The Jets are only on the hook for about $3 million. So they make out really well here. And again, right, like I said, similar to the Fitzpatrick trade, they move a player. They make a move for a player who was going to get released, and they don't need to contend with other teams for Smith's services, which really probably wouldn't have been much, but they still got ahead of the line, so to speak, there. And, you see a lot of people making jokes online, but hey, look, speaking from a Jets fan perspective, Geno Smith massive upgrade over Justin Fields and the rest of that QB room from last season. And even the Raiders, they save a little money here. They don't have to owe them any money. They save some by the Jets picking up some of the money, and they even pick up a 6th round pick here. So your thoughts on Geno coming back to the Jets?
I love this move for the Jets. I think this is a kind of and we're gonna talk about the Jets later, I think, in teams that we both like what they've done so far this offseason. The Jets have taken a lot of just low risk, high reward moves. Geno Smith is still a fine starter in the NFL, and the Jets have 2 good offensive tackles. They've done some other stuff to help their offensive line, so he's gonna play behind a better offensive line. He's gonna have right now, and we'll see with Genti, but right now, a better running back and a better running game. He's got way better weapons in New York, and I still think the Jets are going to look to add more in the receiving core. I think Geno Smith has found himself in a better situation than he was a year ago. And most importantly, there's no pressure on him. To your point, there's no way, or I will be shocked, and maybe this will be something that gets clipped on me and it'll be hilarious. There's no way he plays as bad as the Jets quarterbacks did last year. It may not lead to wins, but he's a better quarterback than what they had last year. And if we're talking about quarterbacks that have moved or were available this offseason, right? Malik Willis, Tua, Kyler Murray, Gardner Minshew's moved. Daniel Jones never even hit the market, so he's not an option. Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett, Kirk Cousins is going to be there. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. I'd probably take Geno over any of those guys, especially for the situations, for the situation that the Jets are in right now, which is we're not necessarily looking for our future quarterback. So you take Malik Willis and throw him out. I think this is the best guy the Jets could get. And I don't think Finn and I are looking at Geno Smith and being like, he's going to be a Pro Bowler for the Jets, but he's going to be a serviceable starter that can run your offense, probably take care of the football. And he was better than anything you had and probably better than anything on the market. You want to tell me maybe Kyler or Tua? Fine. But I think it's clear the Jets are going to do their homework on next year's quarterback class, which is going to be a really fun one to talk about when we get to that time next year or even during the season. And Geno is a 1-year stopgap. And Finn, what's his contract?
I believe he signed. I think he signed for 2 years. I believe I'd have to
Would
check that though.
so it'll be this year and next year with the Jets, or he has.
Yes.
Oh, so I think that's even better because then you get the rookie quarterback you want. And he has Geno Smith as a mentor on that roster, which I think is so valuable for young quarterbacks. So I think this is like not a slam dunk for the Jets, but I think this is a really smart move for the Jets.
Yeah. So he's 2 years. He will make 19.5 million in 2026. Just want to make sure I was on mute.
Yeah,
He'll
yeah,
make 19.5 million on 2026. The Jets are only paying $3 million, like I said. And then he signed for the second year. I don't know how much he's making. I'll be there.
regardless, regardless of fee, you draft. Let's just throw it out there for Jet fans. You draft Arch Manning next year, and you have a guy like Geno helping Arch in his first year in the NFL, that is worth so much. And that's why NFL teams do it. And Geno's been a starter. He's been a starter who's been in New York as a rookie. I don't think we can understate how big that could be for the Jets to get whatever they think their franchise quarterback is and have a guy who's been around it right there to help him.
It is pretty crazy. I feel like I've come full circle in my Jets fandom here. I feel like I'm back to, feel like I'm like 22 years old again here with
I wish,
Geno
man.
Smith as my quarterback. It's funny. I saw something online where it showed like Geno Smith. He's at the top of the graphic and it's just like a circle and it comes back to Geno all the way around. Maybe Geno Smith had to come back here to break this playoff
I
drought
like
after being
that.
part of the original quarterbacks that were a part of how it started.
I
Maybe that's
like
what
that.
happened here. But yeah, I mean, I agree. This is low risk, dude. Compared to the other options that were out there on the market, I am completely cool with it. I will live with this. I cannot stand though the stuff I see online with these freaking Jets fans, like, oh, Geno Smith, like, dude, I don't care what happened a decade ago. Okay, I don't care if he got punched in the face, which I am on record saying if Geno did not get punched in the face, he would have had just as great a year as Ryan Fitzpatrick did that year, and just probably make the playoffs that year. But be that as it may,
I
I'm
forgot that
completely
happened.
cool with Geno coming back here. It's an automatic upgrade to that quarterback room. They're still looking for a backup quarterback. They're going to probably look and sign a veteran. There were rumors it was Carson Wentz. I don't want anything to really do with him, but I don't think that it looks like that rumor's kind of dying down now, so to speak. But yeah, Gino coming in here for 2 years. He's a guy. Hey, like people need to understand, like the Jets quarterback play from the past few years has been at the ground level. It's been that bad. When you've got Brady Cook, you're throwing him out there who's, let's be honest, Brady Cook's basically like a future accountant. He doesn't belong in the NFL. So, you're basically going Brady Cook, Justin Fields, Tyrod Taylor, Geno Smith. Look, on Geno Smith's best day, is he a top 20 quarterback in the NFL? Maybe. I don't know. He might be able to be, but if he can be a solid quarterback who could just get the ball to Garrett Wilson, get the ball to Breece Hall, Mason Taylor, A.D. Mitchell, all these guys, the Jets are going to actually look like a watchable team, which they weren't at all last year on the offensive side of the ball. And like I said, like you said, Tom, we'll get into it later for some teams that we really liked what they did in free agency. Like you said perfectly. Look, are the Jets about to go 10-7 with Geno Smith and make the playoffs? No. But there's a path here maybe to like 7, maybe 8 wins. We'll see.
I had a kid at work today, and we'll touch on this in a second. He tried to make me, and I'll say a lunch bet because I can't bet with my students. But he said, Tommy, lunch bet Jets 4 wins this year. I said, am I taking the Jets with 4 wins, or do I think they're gonna, like, let's say at 4.5? I'm taking the under. He's like, yeah. I said, no, I think they can win more than 4 games this year. And to your point on Geno Smith, a lot of this is recency bias. He was not good last year. That Las Vegas team was horrendous. They're
Mhm.
spending the money they're spending and drafting where they're drafting, not because of their quarterback play. It's very easy to forget that he was a quarterback that led his team to the playoffs the year before that. So, yeah, on his best day, can Geno Smith be a top 20 quarterback? Maybe, potentially. And any Jet fan who's crying about it, I would tell you what quarterback of the guys I named would you rather have? And if you're going to sit here and tell me Tua or Kyler Murray, we're not going to have that conversation because I'd rather have Geno Smith for where the Jets are and what the Jets' goal is right now. I hate to break it to Jet fans. I'll do it so Finn doesn't. You're not going to make the playoffs next year. Odds are you're not going to be a playoff team next year. Your goal is to develop the talent that you have around you, win football games so you can develop a winning culture, see if your head coach is the guy, and then identify what quarterback you like in next year's draft and go get him. That's the Jets' goal for the next 12 months.
The ultimate goal is Aaron Glenn needs to prove that he shouldn't be fired after
Yeah,
this upcoming season.
agreed.
That's what it is. Like you
Agreed.
just said, establish the culture, show that this team can be competitive because they weren't competitive at all last year. And again, I know we should be talking about just Geno Smith, but really the Jets overall in general, since you got me
They're,
on the pedestal over
they're
here,
one and the same, though. They are connected.
it's connected, right? They are. And I think, Aaron Glenn coming into this past year, he really felt like he could win with the Robert Saleh players. Like, right, I think there was like some stuff going on the inside of the Jets facilities where Aaron Glenn, I think, was just kind of ripping Bobby Saleh a lot about how poor the Jets were coached under him, which they were. They were very poorly coached, and he thought they could come in right away and win with this group, and they couldn't. It was that bad. So, yeah, we'll see now. Aaron Glenn, I mean, really like some of the signings they've made on the defense, which we'll get into later. But yeah, Geno Smith, takes the Jets basically from negative quarterback play to like
Competent.
basically neutral to positive.
Competent.
Competent,
He
exactly.
should be a competent quarterback. And then guess what? If he's not, then the wheels have come off for Geno. And the Jets decided, as we said, low risk. They took a low risk, and guess what? Geno Smith ain't your quarterback. It's not the end of the world, Jet fans. He's not going to be your long-term quarterback.
Okay, let's get into some of the notable free agent signings right from the past couple days that we didn't have a chance to comment on. Let's start off with this one that I like. So the Panthers signed linebacker Devin Lloyd, formerly of the Jaguars, to a 3-year, $45 million contract. $25 million of that is guaranteed. Devin Lloyd coming off a 5-interception season last year. He was a second-team All-Pro. He's going to be their 3-down starter in the middle of the Panthers defense. So he's going to join Jalen Phillips, who was another big free agent ticket signing that they picked up earlier in the week. And I was really surprised by this contract. I thought maybe he was going to get a little more really surprising that the Jaguars chose not to move forward. I know they did have some cap restrictions here, but for 15 million a year, based on the market, I really like the signing for the Panthers. They really needed to stabilize the middle of that defense.
If we've learned one thing through free agency, it's that linebacker value just still doesn't have there's NFL teams just don't value it. When you look at some of the money, Devin Lloyd, 15 million, a year, rougher, give or take. Quay Walker, 13.5. Nakobe Dean, 12. Trey Edmonds, 12. Demario Davis, 11. Caden Ellis, 11. Alex Anzalone, an every down starter for Detroit, 8.5. Granted, older. Quincy Williams, older, but 8.5. NFL teams just don't value this still. Yeah, for this price for a Panther team that we talked about their defense last year needing to get better, they had a guy who was a second team All Pro. Now the Jags have their cap issues, and there are probably plenty of Jag fans that'll tell you we don't think that this is sustainable. He can't do this over multiple years, or we weren't willing to take that risk. But for the Panthers, they're willing to, and I think they got a very good football player coming off of the best season he's had in his career.
Yeah, really, really good player, Devin Lloyd. I'm curious to see how he continues to progress now going into next season on a different team now. Let's get into the Commanders here. This is a team that's really done a lot defensively here, a lot of signing. So they signed Nick Cross the other day to a 2-year, $14 million contract. A guy from the Colts who I really liked after last year. He's a very good box safety, very good run defender. Coverage ability can be hit or miss. He had a 50.4 PFF coverage grade last season. But this contract should lock him in as a starting safety. So, right. So with the Commanders, we already touched on Adafe Owe, the contract that he got to line up on the edge of that defense. Since then, they've also added Charles Omenihu, Caleb Von Chason, Leo Chanel, Tim Settle, Amik Robertson. So they're adding players at all three levels of the defense. We saw last year, Tom, you touched on it a lot during your Commanders preview in our free agency previews, just how bad that Commanders defense was. But they have definitely made it a priority. I think they actually entered free agency with the most cap room in the league. And they're definitely doling out the dollars here, bringing in these players to help out their defense.
Yeah, we talked about defense, defense, defense. Dan Quinn's a defensive guy. So these are guys that he definitely feels comfortable with playing his scheme, playing his system. Yeah, they needed a lot, especially at pass rush, and we talked about it. I'd be excited if I'm a Commander fan. I mean, regardless of what you think of these guys, and this goes back to his time in Dallas when he was a defensive coordinator. I think Dan Quinn's an unbelievable defensive coordinator, defensive coach. So whatever you're getting, he's going to coach these guys up. He added the edge rushers. He added the safety. They needed the safety. Added a linebacker, a corner. He's hit every position group, and they needed to. So it'll be interesting. They spent a lot of money. I'm going to go on my little rant on signing players in a little bit and why it doesn't always translate to wins. But this is a team that needed defensive help, and they went out and they got it.
You want to go on your rant right now? Is there
No, we can
specific?
wait until we get to teams because some of why I don't necessarily love certain signings comes down to money and why these guys are available. So we can wait.
Okay.
I'll tease the people a little bit.
Little tease there for the
Yeah.
folks at home. All right, let's stick with the Commanders. Couple offensive signings they made. So they signed Chiga Okonkwo, the tight end from the Titans, 3 years, $30 million. I think depending on how their wide receiver room shakes out, Okonkwo could be a featured pass catcher in this offense. Right, with that contract, I think he'll be locked into a starting tight end role. As right, they had Zach Ertz, but he's currently heading into free agency. Plus, Okonkwo on the young side too. I think he's only like 25 years old. Also today, they signed Rashad White from the Buccaneers. They gave him a 1-year contract. So looks like at this current time, him and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt will be competing for the lead rushing role on the team. I don't think they're done though, adding to that running back room right now.
I expect Brandon Ayuk to end up here. Whether that's worth it or not, we'll discuss when that happens. But he's got connections to Jaden Daniels. It's the spot everybody thinks he's going to end up in. I still think this offense lacks a lot. Again, sometimes the best way to judge what your team has done is what your rivals think of your moves. And as a Cowboy fan, I look at this offense and I go, I'm still not overly scared of it. And granted, the Cowboys had a historically bad defense last year, but I'm not overly scared of it. We'll see. I'm sure there's still moves to be made with this football team. I think they still have some money left. Let me just see if I can get what their number is right now. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they still have some money to spend right now. So I'm curious if maybe they're going to look to add a couple more offensive players that are available. But yeah, I still think this team needs some help on offense. None of those moves have really moved me as this offense can take the next step now, but we'll see.
Yeah, the last report I see on Brandon Ayuk, the 49ers were expected to release him on
Yeah, he
Wednesday.
hasn't been released yet, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. I haven't seen anything about that. So, um, but yeah, Ayuk's been on the outs with them for what's been like 2 years, I feel like at this point.
Been a
Um,
mess.
yeah, so we'll see. And you know, Washington, as I'm reading here, they are considered the favorite to land Ayuk. Let's see. Let's continue through our signings here. So the Bills make a move. They signed edge rusher Bradley Chubb, 3 years, $43.5 million contract. So Chubb's going to get 29 million guaranteed, and he'll be signed through 2028. So he's coming off a season last year. He had 8.5 sacks, which was pretty good, right? Coming off a torn ACL that cost him the 2024 season, right? Injury concerns over his career, but he played all of last season, and we'll see if he can regain, Pro Bowl form with the Bills.
Yeah, it must be nice to be a pass rusher. I mean, I'll just say it like that. Like these guys get money, whether you feel they should or shouldn't. He had 2 good years in Miami. It has to be said. I kind of think he flew under the radar. Like again, we'll talk about guys in a little bit, but we talk about Jalen Phillips versus him. I would have been much more comfortable paying him versus paying Jalen Phillips. He was productive in his 2 years in Miami. We'll see how he holds up in the cold. But yeah, this is an area that we talked about Buffalo needing. They needed pass rushers. The injury concern's the concern, but you're going to take the chance on a guy that can get you what he had. What was it? 8.5 sacks last year. Is that what you said? It was 8.5 last year, 11 year, but the 2023 season before he got injured. And there are a lot of people who say takes you a full year to come back from that ACL. So we should see the best of him this year. So yeah, for the Bills, probably a little bit of an overpay for a guy, but you got to do that to get the edge guy you want.
All right, let's stay in the AFC East. The Patriots made a couple of moves. Let's touch on. So the Patriots, offensively here, signed Romeo Dubs to a 4-year, $80 million contract. So it looks like at this current time, he's going to slide in as the number one wide receiver in New England, right? Following Stephon Diggs' release, right? So he's a guy in 59 career games. He's had over 200 catches for over 2,400 yards, 21 touchdowns. He had a career high in receiving yards last season with 724. He showcased an ability in his career to be able to stretch the field and make contested catches. So I think he'll be a pretty good addition here to the Patriots offense as currently the number one option for Drake May in the passing game. And let me just touch on one more
Yeah.
offensive move.
Go through the other two. Go through the other two.
The other two. So sticking with the offense, Patriots, they signed Elijah Vera Tucker, offensive guard, formerly of the Jets, to a 3-year, $42 million contract. Deal could be up to $48 million per season. So like last year, Vera Tucker, he tore his triceps last season, so he missed all of 2025. But he played 15 games in 2024. But this is a guy with a lengthy injury history. He's only played more than 7 games twice in his 5-year career. So he's a good player, just that he hardly plays. And the last move, I'll just say here, the Patriots also signed Kevin Byard, the safety from the Bears, 1 year, $9 million. So Byard's entering his age 33 season. He hasn't hit the wall yet. For hitting that age limit in the NFL. Apparently there was a limit on his market because he was only shopping himself to contenders. I guess that kind of makes sense for an older player who's looking to possibly win a Super Bowl, but likely he will be their deep safety in 2026. So thoughts on the Patriots moves?
When it comes to Dobbs, I think this is a good signing for them. I think this team needs another wide receiver though, and the name will be AJ Brown. AJ Brown. AJ Brown. We're going to talk about him until either the draft comes and goes, or he gets traded, or doesn't get traded, or whatever it is. But this team needs another wide receiver. I like Romeo Dobbs. I think he's becoming a better wide receiver too. He's steadily gotten better, and I know Green Bay was hoping to keep him. Vera Tucker, again, a lot of money for a guy who has not been super healthy. And it's like $14 million a year. I get that's the going rate for a guard. And the Pats are, whether they expected to be or not, kind of in win now mode to go make moves to win now. So we'll see if he can stay healthy. He's a good football player, but he's got to stay healthy. And yeah, the safety's a a good signing on a good deal. I think that's a good deal for them 1 year. As you mentioned, I actually didn't read that. So to see he was only shopping himself to contenders, benefit to the Patriots. They get him on a deal that I'm sure they're happy with. You know, they're trying to improve their interior. We talked about that of the offensive line. They're adding playmakers. Still think they need one or two more playmakers, but they're a team that's addressing the needs that they had after that Super Bowl loss.
So we'll stick in the AFC East here. So right with the Jets losing Elijah Vera Tucker, they fill his void by signing Dylan Parham from the Vegas Raiders, 2 years, $20 million contract. So right, so the Jets lost John Simpson and Elijah Vera Tucker in free agency. So Parham slides in as the left guard, and the Jets really needed to sign someone here. They couldn't enter the draft with a gaping hole at the position like they had. So Dylan Parham, or I spoke pretty highly about him when I was doing the Raiders preview. He actually was pretty solid last year, nothing special, but solid. I was kind of surprised the Raiders, with so much cap space, chose not to bring him back. I guess he wasn't getting the offer from them that he had hoped for. So he follows his buddy Geno Smith over to the Jets, and he'll be protecting him during the 2026 season.
I have to imagine the fact that they're kicking Jackson Smith or Jackson Smith. They wish Jackson Powers Johnson to one of the guard spots probably played a factor in this as well. He's a serviceable guard, and if you're the Jets, it doesn't stop you from potentially going after a guard or maybe a guy like Caden Proctor, someone like that with your second first round pick, depending on where you like them, that could potentially be a guard for the Jets. It's a serviceable guard, plays well, had a good, not great year for the Raiders last year. And yeah, it's a good signing by the Jets.
Let's go to another former Bears safety now. So there's reports that the Steelers signed Jaquan Brisker to a 1-year contract. I didn't see what any of the financials for this move, but right, he was a guy with the Bears last season. He finished with 69 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 10 QB pressures. He'll likely be the other starting safety pairing alongside Jalen Ramsey in Pittsburgh. And right, we talked about a lot in the free agency preview just how bad the Steelers secondary was. I don't know if Brisker really moves the needle here or not, but he's a pretty solid tackler, guy around the line of scrimmage. But it's an improvement for what the Steelers did have, and unfortunately for the Bears, they lost both their starting safeties here.
Yeah, better than what they had, right? So now it's Brisker, Ramsey. They added Jamel Dean. They have Joey Porter Jr. I think they signed re-signed Asante Samuel
They
Jr. as
did.
well. So this is a football team that we talked about how bad their secondary was last year. Finn touched on it in his preview. They've, in my opinion, gotten better, and we'll see how much better. But it's better than it was a year ago. Brisker will be the guy who's getting in the box, helping against the run, blitzing. Jalen Ramsey will be the deep safety, and they've improved. They've at least improved one of those quarterback positions. So they identified secondaries is an area we need to get better, and Brisker and Dean signing have gotten them better there.
Another move here on the defensive side of the ball. So the Bengals signed Jonathan Allen to a 2-year, $26 million contract. All right. So Allen now at the age of 31, coming off a solid season, generated 34 QB pressures and had 4 sacks with the Vikings last season in a rotational role. So it looks like the Bengals are trying to pair Allen in the middle here with BJ Hill. That could probably give them a decent interior pass rush. So this is basically what the Bengals have done here, right? They lost Trey Hendrickson. He went to the Ravens, division rival here, but they've trying to improve that defense still by bringing in guys like Jonathan Allen, Boy Mafe. They signed from Seattle. They got Brian Cook now on the back end. So as we talking about the free agency preview again, we all know how awful their defense was. They're doing what they can here to try to improve it.
Yeah, this is, and you're going to hear us say this a lot. We are in tier 2 of free agency now. You know, free agency is usually 3 tiers. It's that first tier. We talked about those guys on Monday. They're going to get paid. They're going to get their money. Tier 2 and even tier 3 to an extent are guys who are a bit older, in some cases a bit older, guys who have developed or have had good seasons in maybe not their previous one, but in the immediate future have had impactful seasons for whatever team they were on, and teams are going to take a chance that they can get what they were a year, 2, 3, 4 years ago on their team now. And Jonathan Allen and guys we're going to touch on in a minute are exactly like that. There's a guy who had some really good seasons for the Vikings, was not great last year. And the Bengals are hoping to change their scenery, a different scheme. Maybe he's familiar with the coaching staff. I don't know. Maybe him being paired with different players will help get him to where he was 2, 3 years ago when he was a really good player for the Vikings. So again, a low risk, 2 years, not breaking the bank on the contract. I'm sure it's a type of deal where if they need to get out of this deal a year from now, they can do it with minimal cost as well. So, yeah, well, we're gonna touch on a bunch of these over the next 5 minutes.
Yep. Speaking of another older player who played for the Vikings, the Packers signed Javon Hargrave, 2 years, $23 million contracts. Right, Hargrave was cut by the Vikings earlier this week. He only had 3.5 sacks last season, 52 tackles, but he played in 16 games. Yeah, Green Bay for this deal is able to get out of the contract in 2026 if Hargrave shows signs of aging during his age 33 season. Another older defensive lineman who, trying to hang on here. Actually, I saw something on a video on X actually today. I guess he cut a video. He was telling his son that he signed with the Packers. His son was like beyond fired up. He's like, "We're going to Green Bay. That's awesome!" So
That is
the kid was
awesome.
excited about it. At least I don't know if Packer fans are too excited by this move, but his son was excited.
Again, a low risk, high reward. This is a guy who, in the last 5 years, has been a pretty impactful player on a good Viking defense. I forgot where he was before that. Was he with the Niners at one point too?
He was with the
I think he was with
Niners
the
and he was with the
Niners at one
Eagles
point,
too.
so he had an impact there. So, you know what, the Packers bring this guy in. For all intents and purposes, it's a 1-year deal. They struggled after trading Kenny Clark. They moved on from Rashawn Gary, and who knows when they have Micah Parsons. So this is a guy that they're hoping can help against the run, can help shore up the interior, very low risk, and best case scenario, you get 2 years of what he was more of in San Francisco than he was, uh, what he was in Minnesota.
All right, let's touch on a couple. We got some defensive backs here coming up here. So, the Ravens make another move. They signed safety Jalen Hawkins to a 2-year, $10 million contract. Hawkins was a guy who was with the Patriots last season. They elevated him into a starting role last season, and he delivered 4 interceptions and 1.5 sacks in 15 games. And he's likely a guy who will have a starting role in the Baltimore defense as they need to fill the void because they lost Aloy Gilman, who signed with the Chiefs on a 3-year, $24.8 million contract, 15 million guaranteed for Aloy Gilman. Really like him. He's a really good player, very solid in coverage. Maybe he went to Notre Dame too. Maybe that's why I like him so much. But he was a guy last year, right? He was traded to Baltimore from the Chargers, and he immediately helped stabilize the Ravens secondary. So this is really the Chiefs' really first step towards rebuilding their secondaries. We spoke a lot about on the last episode, right? This is a secondary without Trent McDuffie, no more Jalen Watson, say bye to Brian Cook. So getting Gilman in that secondary is at least a good start for the Chiefs.
This has to be like a sigh of relief from Chief fans, right? Because that
Yeah.
secondary looked bad, and hate to break it to you guys, it's still not good. But this is at least a signing that it'll help you. He's a quality starter in the NFL. He probably comes in and can replace Brian Cook and what he brought. So you're going to feel good about that if you're a Chiefs fan. There's still more that needs to be done for this football team, but at least you got a starting caliber safety on your roster, and you're not looking at this team now going, are we just going to play a bunch of young kids next year? So yeah, they needed that signing.
Let's stick with the defensive backs. The Eagles make their first notable move. They signed Tyreek Woolen to a 1-year, $15 million contract. It sounds like, from the details I saw, it sounds like it might be like a team-friendly type contract. I think maybe he chose to go to the Eagles, go to a contender. Right? He was a solid player in Seattle, but maybe you can make the case he's underperformed based on what a lot of folks thought would be right. He had a really good rookie season, but maybe going to Philadelphia, working with Vic Fangio, maybe he can become more of a maybe he can get back to a Pro Bowl level type.
Yeah, I hate this signing because I like this signing. This is like a classic Eagles signing. They needed they needed to pick up a second corner. Last year was Asante Adoree Jackson, excuse me, and he was not good for this football team. I mean, you have Quinyon Mitchell. I assume Cooper DeJean is really going to take that Reed Blankenship role now, and they needed a guy to play opposite. And I really like Tyreek Woolen. Yeah, we can talk about how he may not have been the most productive corner, but he's a really solid cover corner. And the Eagles got themselves another really solid cover corner. So I hate it because I like it, and the Eagles just they always seem to make moves that work for their football team. So Howie Roseman does it again. Shocker.
Eagles made another move here too. So they signed edge rusher Arnold Ebiketie from the Atlanta Falcons, 1-year, $7.3 million contract. So Ebiketie last year, 25 QB pressures, 2 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. for loss, and I guess he'll be part of the solution at
Yeah,
least to replace Jalen Phillips.
they need more.
Yeah.
This is a step in that direction. I'm sure they're hoping part of that'll come from Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. We'll see what happens with Jalen Carter. Word is they're still shopping him, but if they hang on to him, I'm sure they're hoping to get pressures from him. They got some young guys on that defense they like as well. But yeah, he's just a piece to help add what replace what they lost.
Yeah, they lost, I think, at least 3 or 4 starters on that defensive
Yeah,
side of the ball.
yeah.
Moving on to defense. So the Saints sticking on right, I said sticking on defense. Saints signed linebacker Caden Ellis, 3 years, $33 million contract. This is another guy leaving Atlanta. So he signs for $23 million guaranteed. The contract could max out at $39 million. Last season, he was a guy who had 3.5 sacks. He had an 83 PFF pass rush grade, but this is going to be a guy who fits right into the middle of the defense. He should slot into that spot that Demario Davis left when he signed with the Jets. Let's
Yeah, I talked about him on the preview. I'll touch very quickly when we talked about Atlanta. I liked him a lot. I thought he was a player Atlanta would try to keep. He'll end up in New Orleans and he's gonna be an every down guy for them. So it's a good spot.
let's go back. Let's start looking at some offensive line signings recently. So we got the Texans here. They signed offensive tackle Braden Smith, 2 years, $25 million contract coming over from the Indianapolis Colts. So this should mean that Smith will take over at that right tackle position based on that contract. I'm assuming that Trent Brown now kind of turns more into a swing tackle for the Texans. Smith is coming off a down year by his standards, but he still had a 65.3 PFF blocking grade. And so maybe he's got another year or two left remaining before he really hits that age walls. He's in his early 30s now. And then another offensive line signing here. So the Browns signed Elgton Jenkins to a 2 year, $24 million contract, right? So Elgton Jenkins, he was the center for the Packers. He got released by them. 24 hours later, the Browns pick him up as they continue their offensive line overhaul here. So he joins a Browns offensive line that has since signed Zion Johnson. They re-signed Tevin Jenkins and they traded for Titus Howard. So the Browns have a making of, a solid unit that they're working on constructing right now, to be blocking in front of either Shedeur Sanders or Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, again, like sigh of relief from the Browns fans this week because they lost a lot on the offensive line. They've done a lot to try to shore it up, trading for Howard, getting the other three guys in. We'll see. We'll see how it all comes together for this football team. But again, they're a team that lost a lot, and they needed to make sure they found ways to add it and weren't overly reliant on the draft. So yeah, yeah.
We'll throw you a bone here, Tom. Your boys signed cornerback Kobe Durant, 1 year, $5.5 million. He started 29 of 32 games over the last 2 seasons with the Rams, totaling 80 tackles, 15 pass breakups, 4 interceptions, mostly exclusively as an outside corner. Had a 67.4 grade in coverage last year, and I guess he'll get a chance to earn one of those starting roles as an outside corner for your boys.
Yeah, again, a classic Cowboy offseason move, low risk, doesn't deter you from drafting whoever the best defensive player will be. So if Monsieur Delane is still there, or if they're really okay with the medicals on Jared McCoy, then they can go in that direction if they want. But yeah, Cowboys needed a corner. You can argue they potentially might need one more, and they finally went out and got one.
So some other news that just broke recently. We'll touch on it. Rasheed Walker, the left tackle from the Packers, signed a 1 year, $10 million contract with the Panthers. So, right, Rasheed Walker, he's a former 7th round pick. He was making just over $6 million on his rookie contract, so he gets a nice bump here for Carolina. Carolina continues to dish out the money in free agency here. So, really like the signing for the Panthers. Rasheed Walker was considered kind of like we were kind of saying it off air, kind of one of the best tackles on the market. So this looks like a bargain here for Carolina.
He was a top tackle.
I think he was one of them.
I'm curious to see what the number is. I'm curious to see if there was some medical stuff with him that teams weren't as willing to offer him a long-term deal as possible, or he
10, 10
feels
million, 10 million.
10
He
million.
said.
So maybe he felt I'm not getting the offers I want. I'll take a 1 year prove it deal and show everybody that I'm the guy. But when you look at what Tyler Linderbaum got, and you look at what Walker's getting, very interesting. There has to be more to this than what we've seen reported so far.
Another notable move I just want to point out too today, right? We talked about earlier in the week how the Tennessee Titans were doling out so much money at the cornerback position. Today they released L'Jarius Sneed. He's still only 29 years old, but right, this is probably one of the toughest contracts to eat here that we've seen over the past few years. He came to Tennessee, signed a 4-year, $76 million contract, $55 million guaranteed. He's only played in 12 games in 2 seasons, as knee injuries have really plagued his career. And depending upon his health, he'll probably need to settle for like one of those 1-year prove it type of deals at this point.
Yeah, we touched on this on Monday, and we basically said he's gonna get released. It's just a matter of when, not if. And yeah, I mean, he's a guy like Marshawn Lattimore. He hits the open market now, and there are going to be teams that look to get the players that these guys were 2, 3 years ago. So there'll be a market for them. It's a move the Titans had to make, and we'll see where he ends up.
Any other signings you wanted to touch upon that we didn't mention,
No,
Tom?
you got them all.
Got them all? Okay. All right, so let's close with answering some team-specific questions. So, right, we've seen, a lot of teams make moves, maybe we've also seen a lot of teams either make questionable moves or maybe some teams haven't made moves at all in some regard. So, Tom, I wanted to get your thoughts here. What team do you believe, or maybe team or teams, were winners this week that massively improved their rosters?
I have a couple here. I like what the Rams did. They had McDuffie. They signed Watson. They still have the 13th overall pick. Again, like a lot of the teams I talk about here aren't going to be guys who brought in 5 or 6 or 7 guys. And I guess I'll go on my little spiel now. Teams that have money to spend are usually teams that don't draft well. They don't draft well, and they don't have to retain their own. So they have all this salary cap, and they go and they sign guys who, quite frankly, if the teams that had them loved them, would still be on their football team in some capacity. So I'm not knocking teams that are spending all this money, or maybe they had a couple years not drafting well, and there are scenarios where teams just can't keep players. But a majority of the time, if a guy hits free agency, he's there because uh, he didn't fit, or they didn't feel was worth the contract that he was going to get. So when I look at a team like the Rams, who said our secondary was not good last year, they go and they had McDuffie, they had Jalen Watson, who's a great player. They still have the 13th overall pick in the draft. They're a team I like. The Chargers, we talked about what they needed to do. They added to their interior line. They added Mitchell, a running back who I'm sure Mike McDaniel will love on that offense. If they can add another wide receiver, I think they've made themselves better. The Steelers, I really like what the Steelers have done. They've improved their secondary. They added Rico Dowdle at running back, who's a capable 3-down running back. So I like that as well. Again, quarterback leaves questions, but I like what they've done. And then I like what Seattle has done. They've kept 2 pieces I think are really important to their football team. Rashid Shaheed's a player that changed this football team. I can't say it enough. He made them a better football team in terms of special teams. Uh, uh, and they keep Josh Jobe, who's a physical corner in the slot, who will keep familiarity in their secondary. And I really like what Tampa's done. They re-signed Kate Otten. They had an every down wide receiver linebacker in Alex Anzalone. They had a running back in Kenneth Gainwell that I think is one of the more underrated running backs in football. And you hear me talk about low risk, high reward. Ashawn Robinson, Alquin Muhammad, 2 guys that if you can get what you got either last year or years prior from these guys, then you struck gold on these guys. So those are teams, and you have 2 on your list that I'm going to touch on when you talk about them. But those are the guys that I really liked what they did.
Yeah, a couple of teams I'll touch on here. I really like what the Raiders have done, right? I mean, when your roster is as bad as it is, I guess the only way you can go is up. But the Linderbaum signing, I really like somebody that can glue together that offensive line, right? You're drafting Fernando Mendoza. He's coming up first overall. I think there's maybe no other better center in the league I want in front of him than Tyler Linderbaum. I also like the moves that they made on their defense. Like you re-sign, I mean, I named the list off earlier, the moves that they made. They also just brought back, who's the corner from Jacksonville, Campbell. They signed him, I saw recently too. That's another move for them. You get Maxx Crosby back, which is, I guess, icing on the cake sort of here. So, and you sign Quay Walker. You signed Kobe Dean. You're building at least the defense is more of a respectable level than it was last year. You signed Jalen Naylor, who probably is going to act as your wide receiver too in a way. And he's a guy who's kind of unproven, but right, he was playing behind Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson in Minnesota. There wasn't a lot of room to eat over there. So I'm looking forward to see what he can do for Fernando Mendoza. They still need a number one wide receiver, but they're moving in the right direction here. The Saints are a team I really like what they did. So, Tom, Travis Achan apparently is how you pronounce ETN. It's Travis Achan. Did you see that video today
I
at the
did
press
not.
conference?
Would they do a pronunciation video?
No, he came out and he
Yeah,
basically
that's what I'm
said, "Yeah, my
saying. He
last
did?
name's always been pronounced Achan, but like he was so
Achan.
tired of correcting
Achan.
people so much, so he just went with ETN. He was just like, whatever, I guess that's
That's
fine." But
hysterical.
he came out in the press conference today. He's like, "Hey, going forward, it's Achan."
Oh,
So
that's
you've
funny.
got a Travis Achan and we got a Devon Achan in Miami, spelled completely different. But I thought that was interesting today. But yeah, be that as it may, I think that's a fantastic signing for them. On top of it, too, on the defensive side, Caden Ellis, who we read off today, they brought him in from Atlanta. And David Edwards, the guard from Buffalo. I think he was probably outside of Linderbaum. I think he got the highest contract here for an offensive lineman. But that's what we talked about during our season preview, how this team, if they feel like Tyler Shuck's the guy, build around him, give him a credible chance to be able to prove it. And you did that here by bringing in Travis Achan. We'll see what happens with Alvin Kamara. There's still news about that up in the air, but I really like what they did offensively. I'll give credit to the Carolina Panthers here, right? Might not agree with the money for Jalen Phillips, but they needed somebody coming off that edge to affect the passer. They had Devin Lloyd today in the middle. They just signed Rasheed Walker. He was on my list before I even know knew he was going to be signed. I really like some of the moves they make. I will give the Colts credit that I think their main goal here was to keep Daniel Jones and Alec Pierce. They
Yep.
they got
Yep.
that goal accomplished. They still need to work on their secondary, but I think with the amount of money they spent, I think that was their overall goal. And then we talked about earlier the Jets, how they added a lot of low risk, high reward type players. Demario Davis, they brought him back. Dude, he had me fired up in his press conference yesterday. He was basically saying, "I love being back with the Jets." I felt like I was ready to run through a wall and play with this guy, dude. He was got me really fired up for the season. But yeah, the Jets, another team that I really liked what the moves they did. And again, like I said, during the Geno Smith segment we had today, we're starting at the ground floor here. Just like the Raiders, the only way you can go is up.
Yeah, I had the Saints and the Panthers on my list as well. I think the Saints have made themselves better, and the Panthers again. I didn't talk about money. I didn't talk about not loving how much money they've spent. But they had the money to spend. They addressed the needs that they had, and they feel they can win this division next year. So I already said I really like what Tampa did. I think those could be the top two teams in the NFC South next year.
All right, so we talked about teams that we felt were winners this week. What teams stand out to you? Maybe they didn't get worse, but were you disappointed in one or two maybe that didn't do enough this week?
I just like I don't know if the Colts have made themselves better. I get they've retained what they retained, but this is a football team that didn't make the playoffs last year. And if you're sitting here telling me they didn't make the playoffs because of Daniel Jones, I'm just not going to buy that. This team needed to add a little bit more. And if we're like, hey, Alec Pierce is the guy at wide receiver and Josh Downs is the guy at wide receiver, I think they need a little bit more on offense. So the Colts and the Chiefs, I feel like the Chiefs are trending towards. Is this a team that's just going to look at their offense next year and be like, our offense is going to carry us? I'm going to get it up very quickly here because I had it up before. Where's their like, yeah, I had Kenneth Walker. It's a great signing. It will help them. They added the safety. That'll help them. I like Tonga playing with Chris Jones. Are they going to be able to get to the quarterback? Do they have anybody you're scared of catching the football? I fully understand they have Travis Kelce. He's 36 years old. Are we scared of him? Patrick Mahomes is coming off of an injury. There's nothing they can do about that. Those are the two teams, and then one or two I'm going to touch on that you jotted down here. I just asked, did those teams do enough to make themselves better right now?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the Colts, right? I think their goal, honestly, was to bring those guys back. And like you touched on that, yeah, their defense still needs a lot of work, especially in the secondary. So the teams that I have on my list that I was a little disappointed in, Jaguars really disappointed me. I think letting Travis Achan and Devin Lloyd leave, especially Lloyd. I feel like that contract wasn't too bad. I feel like they really could have made it work, but I guess they're assuming that they can they can find other guys. Like, right, I mean, Devin Lloyd, they didn't pick up his fifth-year option, so they put themselves in this position knowing they could have lost him, and they happened to lose him when he came off a career year for them. And they really haven't made many moves in free agency to really replace him right now. Another team I had on my list here was the Eagles, just because, right, they sat out the first wave of free agency. They signed Reek Woolen today. It looks like they're starting to make a couple moves. It looks like they added another defensive back here. Jonathan Jones, I think they signed. I think I just saw
Okay,
that
yeah,
come
yeah, yeah.
over. Yeah, so they're starting to, at least with the second wave, they're starting to make some moves, but, I'm not really saying like, that I'm disappointed in them. I'm just saying like they definitely got worse losing some of these players. And then the other team I'll touch on is the Packers, right? We talked about during the preview how they were kind of constrained with money. But they really haven't done too much that I have seen. Maybe now they're starting to get a little active, but they traded Rashawn Gary to your boys, right? And right, and you guys have their first round pick this year either, so they're not really going to be able to get better in the draft right away, especially in the first round. And they released another guy today too, Elgin Jenkins. They lost Rasheed Walker. We just said to Carolina. So another team here that did not get better this week.
Yeah, with the Eagles, they're very much a we're going to draft and develop, and they have a number of young guys in those positions that we touched on in the previews. The Jags are another team. I think they're comfortable with where they're at, and they're going to draft and add. The Packers are in a really, really tough spot. They just don't have a ton of money to add. They don't have a first round pick. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do to make themselves better.
All right, let's talk about specific signings now. Is there a specific signing that you liked best this week, whether it's for a player in general or for a team position fit?
I love I'm gonna keep harping on it because when you have guys that change your season, they deserve to be talked about. Rashid Shaheed staying with the Seahawks, I think, is huge. They clearly wanted to keep him. He clearly wanted to stay there. Mike Evans of the 49ers, people want to talk about his how banged up he is or his injury thing. He hasn't missed a lot of games. He did last year, but he's a guy who plays a lot of football. He can be a true number one for the Niners if he's healthy. I love that. I love Jamel Dean to pair with Porter Jr. and Sante Samuel Jr. and Jalen Ramsey. And I'm going to go homer here. I love the Jalen Thompson signing for Dallas. They get a guy who can do everything. You want to talk about fired up? He was talking today. I was super excited to hear about what he said. I'm a defensive back. I'm not a safety. I can play corner. I can cover guys. I can play in the slot. I can play in the box. Wherever you need me to play, I can play. So
Yes, a couple other signings. So let's talk about players I really liked. Right outside of like the Tyler Linderbaum to the Raiders, Devin Lloyd to the Panthers, and what the Saints did. I really like a couple of signings here. I like the Giants signing of Tremaine Edmonds, a linebacker.
yeah,
I feel like they
me too.
really needed somebody
Yep.
in the middle of their defense to really get it going here. Right, they let go of Bobby Okereke, so they needed a replacement there for him. Some of the Bears signings today, I mean, Devin Bush, we'll see. I like the Kobe Bryant signing. I think he's definitely an upgrade over what Jaquan Brisker was. And right, a lot younger than Kevin Byard too. So I like that signing, and I'll give them credit for improving their defense in free agency here. And then on the back end to it, is there a specific signing that you disagreed with or that made no sense to you?
Disagree or they make no sense. I'm not building these football teams, but like Jalen Phillips is getting paid a lot of money for a guy who doesn't get to the quarterback a lot. Alec Pierce is getting paid a lot of money for a guy who had one good season. So it's more of signings like that when I'm looking like Wandell Robinson,
Yeah.
that's a lot of money for a dude who's probably gonna be a slot corner, a slot wide receiver, So, and again, maybe these work out and it's all right. But yeah, there are some of these deals when I look at the higher end, and that's what you have to do. You got to overpay for some of these guys. But John Franklin Myers is getting a lot of money for a guy who's a good, not great defensive tackle. But that's what you're going to do to get guys that you want and guys you think that fit your football team. You're going to overpay for them a little bit.
Yeah, kinda echo, what you're saying here with the pass rusher. So, right, Odafe Oweh to the Commanders for me. I mean, he was a guy last year. Remember, he started the year with Baltimore. He didn't do anything in Baltimore
Nothing.
last year. They were not good. And then he goes to the Chargers with Jesse Minter working as the defensive coordinator there, and he had a big second half. He had 7 sacks, in 12 games. So, I mean, he's got a lot to prove here to earn that contract for me. And to echo what you're saying too, the Titans. So, right, I mean, Alontae Taylor and Cordell Flott, $100 million guaranteed to those two cornerbacks, which is just outrageous to me. I mean, Alontae Taylor, he's a solid player, but I mean, you're getting paid now like a top 10 corner in the league. you're gonna
Yeah,
be
that's fair.
tasked with stepping up to, you gotta play against Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and all these guys. You're gonna get expected to line up against them and defend them. So good luck to you. And then Cordell Flaught's another guy. I get that probably Dable knew him from the Giants, but another guy who I think is just okay. I think there's some potential there. So maybe Saleh works with him, and he's a guy that maybe can develop more into an outside corner. But I wasn't a fan of that move. And I'll throw another one out here through a trade. I'm not really a fan of the Bills trading for DJ Moore and giving him all that money that was guaranteed to
Fair,
him.
yeah,
I mean,
that's
I
a
get
fair one.
they needed a number one receiver, but DJ Moore, I think he's still 29, so he's hanging on to his 20s. But I don't know. I think maybe the best years for him might have gone past him.
I love Alontae Taylor, but that's a very, very fair point. I mean, he was arguably a top 15, 10 corner in football last year, but now it needs to be consistent. You need to do it yearly. Cordell Flott's a good one. And Titans, we've named a bunch of Titan guys. They have money. They clearly identified players that they liked and knew they were going to have to pay over asking price. And sometimes that's what happens when A, you have money to spend, and B, you're desperate to make your football team better.
Yeah, it was so funny. Like I saw some of the stuff online, because right, Saleh, you got all these former Jets heading to the Titans. Like JFM, I really like actually. He's a really good player. Is he worth that much money? I don't know. But yeah, bringing in guys. Once I saw like a guy like Tony Adams sign with him, I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me. Tony Adams is barely a practice squad player. So yeah, a lot of former Jets, a lot of ribbon online between Jets and Titans fans, which is always good humor going around.
Absolutely. Jet South, they're calling it, right?
That's right, Jets South right there. Or maybe New York South too, with all the guys that Dable's bringing in from the Giants too. All right, folks, thanks for hanging in the loft with us. The official Loft Sports podcast can be found wherever you consume your podcasts. Check out our website, loftsportus.com. We continue to add scouting reports. I just added Monroe Freeling today for you, Tom. So Tommy's continuing to churn those out. I've been adding new baseball preview every day. I just added the Chicago Cubbies today. Check out our articles, rate and review. Please let us know how we're doing. Feedback, very important for us to know if we're doing something right or maybe we're doing something wrong. Could we be doing something better? You let us know. Follow us on X, YouTube, TikTok. We have a Facebook page now. We have an Instagram. So we're on all 5 social platforms under Loft Sport USA. Please rate and review us on whichever platform you listen to your podcasts. Thanks everybody for listening. We will talk to you this weekend when we discuss the college basketball bracket. Thank you.